Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm Mauricio Sanchez, Senior Director of Enterprise Security and Networking Research here at Dell. Many of you probably don't know who Dell is, and so always like to spend a couple of moments. We've been around 30 years. We're celebrating 30-year anniversary this year. We're a boutique market analyst firm focused on telecom, security, enterprise networking, and data center infrastructure. And what we're known for are the numbers, being able to quantify at a very granular level what's happening in the technology landscape. And for many of our clients, we're seen as the gold standard by executives, investors, and government agencies. So thank you again. And so let's continue. So we're here to talk about the convergence of AI in the context of networking and security. So here at Dell, of course, we've been sinking our teeth into the domain of artificial intelligence. And what we see is that it's the new gravity pulling network and security together. And why that is for three key reasons. First, AI is reshaping the traffic across every network layer. Last, a lot of the focus has been on the data center because that's been the nexus of artificial intelligence and the attacks it's created on the infrastructure. But it's not just there that we see the impact. We see surges and changes and new requirements emerging across the entire landscape into the WAN, even down to the campus. So that's the first point around the need to think about networking and security together. Secondarily, with AI, it's turning the hacker community not just into your traditional hacker, it's enabling even the mediocre hackers to become super hackers. We started to see a situation and unfortunately incidences where the goodness of AI is now being turned on its head to go after and be used for evil. And lastly, of course, in the background, as enterprise infrastructure and and applications in the post-pandemic era become business critical, enterprises need 5 nines of uptime, right? And this is where yet another area where AI and the convergence network security can come and provide a solution or a runway to be able to get to better resiliency and uptime. Ultimately, the takeaway here is that network operations, security operations, in the context of the AI landscape, can no longer be parallel silos, right? We need to be thinking about them in unison. And like anything in the IT landscape, it is a journey. Now we see enterprises stumbling and moving in various number of ways because nothing ever starts in the ideal state, right? It's like today most people are starting in the left lower hand quadrant of this graph, and where I have the x-axis being AI being used for network and security operations. And so as you go to the increasing to the right, it's using more AI goodness in the SecOps and ops security ops world. And then the other axis is the intensity of AI in the enterprise, because AI, at least in our view, is a workload. It is necessitating a set of resources and different constructs to be able to address. And for a lot of enterprises, right, they are starting with what they had, which is a very manual process, very manual ways of thinking about it, and ultimately they start on a journey. Now, unfortunately for a lot of enterprises, what we see is that AI lands on their infrastructure and they get into the AI strained infrastructure quadrant, which is the upper left hand quadrant, where we've got the network administrators and security administrators sweating bullets, and they're not really empowered and are not able to react accordingly. Now, we have seen progressive companies before AI as a workload arrives into their environment, embracing AI operations for both network and security, and they get to the AI augmented network, right? So they're perhaps a little bit more progressive and in a better position. But ultimately, where we see the end state here is that where there is both infrastructure change and operational change that are contemplating the impacts of AI to get to the upper right-hand quadrant here, where it's an AI-empowered network that is being able to run cleanly and efficiently, and be able to use both AI and serve AI applications well. And so that is the journey that we see over the next 5 years, many enterprise embracing. And so with that, that's enough about what I think and what we're cooking up here at Dell. I've got with me a couple of distinguished guests to be able to have a fireside chat with. We're going to divvy up our time together in three sections, right? We're going to talk about AI convergence imperative. Now, why is it that people are thinking about, or why should people think about this convergence on the AI and networking and security landscape? And then we'll pivot to what are the challenges in terms of when you do embrace AI? What are the risks and performance pressures, right? So it's nothing comes for free. So we'll talk a little bit more about what to think about, and then lastly is to empower, right? Get to that state of nirvana to be able to discuss how AI helps and what organizations should be thinking about, right? What are the next steps here? So with that, let's give ourselves a little moment to introduce ourselves. So Renuka, why don't you kick things off and introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you, Mauricio. My name is Renuka Nadkarni. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Aryaka Networks. As Mauricio said, this is a journey, and personally, I've been on this journey for about 25 years trying to solve the new and the latest security problems as the technologies are evolving. Aryaka has been in the business for about 15 years, and we take a lot of pride in building five nines reliability network, high performance, one pass architecture that is also trying to converge networking and security with build ground up to solve these next generation problems.
Thank you, Renuka.
Well,
Kevin, on to you.
thanks. Yeah, so I'm Kevin Deierling. I'm run our networking business here at NVIDIA, and of course, AI is central to everything we do. I came to NVIDIA about 5 years ago through an acquisition of a company called Mellanox, and we've been working on AI networking ever since. And AI, as you can imagine, is really fast, and there's a huge amount of data, so it does create all sorts of new challenges for cybersecurity, but also performance, and we need to really balance those two things together. So exciting to be here. We work closely with Aryaka and Dell, so you're both great partners of ours.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. So let's dig in. Now, we're here to talk about how AI is driving convergence of networking and security, right? And before we talk about AI in particular, perhaps we could lay a little bit of groundwork and talk about the convergence hypothesis. Are network and security converging? No, they are from our perspective, but I'd love to hear both of your perspective. Would like to take a first crack at that.
Yeah, I can start. So, one of the things that cybersecurity has always been important, but what we see is that AI is really changing things in many different ways. And what we see is that we need AI for cybersecurity and cybersecurity for AI. And as you point out, AI can actually accelerate the hackers. And so that's something that we need to be aware of. But I think the really important thing is that AI is using a ton of data, that there's some opacity. It's hard to see what's happening when AIs are talking to AIs or talking to AIs. And this all creates new challenges. The amount of data that's being created is massive, and the networking performance is incredible. So we're shipping today 400 gigabit per second networks, moving to 800 gigabits per second, and 1.6 terabits is right around the corner. And when we start talking about terabit per second networks that's astounding. We internally in our data centers and in the rack, we have terabytes per second. And so it's no longer possible to sort of just statically create a set of rules. You really need to be very, very dynamic and responsive. And so all of these new challenges, we accelerate things, we make things fast, including cybersecurity, but we don't build cybersecurity solutions. We rely on partners to do that, folks like Aryaka.
Yeah, and Kevin, just
Very
add to that comment of yours. This is an age-old problem of performance and security. If you like, we have seen this evolution in the network industry where back in the day, there were separate networking teams making decisions. And then there were security teams which would always come in the way of the business, so to speak. And there was always a conflict between the two. And what has happened over the last few years is we are seeing this, even the organizational convergence in the companies where it's no longer I have to make compromises for performance or for security, because security is kind of like part and parcel of the problem statement, which is also business impacting now. So to your point, our customers are heavily migrating towards a converged networking and security play. And it's not easy because the whole industry has been divided into networking vendors and security vendors. So the whole unified SASE as a service that we are trying to bring to the table, it was architected from the get-go to bring this convergence together. And we'll talk more about this. But this is definitely something that we are seeing as a heavy industry trend, trying to solve these problems together as a business and not as different organizational decision makers.
Thanks for that, Renuka. What I'm hearing here is that it seems like AI has two sides to the coin, and I'd like to dig a little deeper. In particular, does AI increase complexity or reduce it? Because it sounds like it's a little bit of both. What's your take?
So I feel like AI is actually introducing a little bit of undeterministic behavior, both on the networking and the security side. And let me explain that for a second. When we talk to our customers back in the day, when they did network architecture, network design, it was always a point-to-point link. And it was always deterministic because people would typically buy from service providers like 10 Mbps or 100 Mbps. And it was always defined between their offices and their data centers. And now the users are everywhere. Applications are hosted in all public cloud SaaS. Especially what AI has done, for good or for bad, a lot of AI applications are actually coming in as SaaS. So now what has happened is the traffic patterns have changed drastically, but the security needs have not changed. Okay, so when I had a point-to-point, I had a very clean perimeter. I had a very nice firewall, which did what I asked it to do. And now it's like, I don't even know how I'm going to intercept the traffic. And then we'll talk a little bit more in details about the security challenges in a bit. But I think from a get-go, the whole architectural paradigm has to change because of the adoption of new technologies such as AI.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that every time there's a new workload, and AI is certainly a new workload, it really changes the way that cybersecurity needs to be applied. One of the things that we see here is that the velocity of AI is really accelerating things. So we don't have these static workloads anymore that you can sort of a priori figure out what is happening. More and more, we have agentic AI workflows where AIs are talking to AIs or talking to AIs and then interacting with humans. And so one of the things that, we have a platform called Morpheus that actually characterizes behaviors, and we develop digital signatures. This person behaves in this particular way. These are the kinds of files they access. This is the way they log in, the machines, the devices. And we characterize everything. We characterize devices, we characterize individuals and people, and we develop a digital fingerprint using AI to do that. And we stream the data in real time from our networking to these the powerful AI engines that can detect anomalous behaviors. So if suddenly, a human being is firing passwords at the speed of a computer, we can detect that in real time and actually isolate that traffic and move things across. And so really being able to integrate that into cybersecurity solutions. Again, we accelerate things with our networking hardware, and we stream telemetry data. We can perform AI very quickly. And then we take those solutions that really are just a framework and provide them to partners to build a solution that customers can use. So we make things fast, and partners like Aryaka make things easy, that are actually effective. So we need to use AI to protect AI.
I would add to that, Kevin, because you touched upon a very critical point with Morpheus. There are two aspects to security, or in general, that customers care about. First one is visibility, and what you touched upon is in just being able to have that visibility, and this is where a combination of network layer and security is important, because in most security implementations, you take subset of your traffic and you share it with the security vendor to do whatever they can do. But if you already knew what traffic needed to be processed, like you are actually, missing the whole other things that the traffic that you're not sending to the security vendor. So I think first and the foremost, the benefit we see because of the acceleration in hardware with things like Morpheus and NVIDIA is that now we have ability to process all the traffic through the system. And we don't have to make choices. Customers don't have to make choices of taking subset of the traffic for security processing. I mean, that's like a huge benefit from a visibility perspective. And this is where we have built reports that actually tell customers, we are using the term shadow AI. Just like back in the day, we had shadow IT, we had shadow applications. Shadow AI is just letting customers know what it is that they are seeing, and do it at a fast speed. And then the second piece, which is even more interesting, is that as a cybersecurity vendor, you have to make choices whether you allow the traffic or not. And it's relatively simple when you're working on like known protocols, web protocols. You know the format, you know how things work. But as Kevin was alluding to, AI is an ecosystem. There are agentic AIs talking to other AI model, talking to different applications provided potentially by different vendors. Now, how do you intercept all of that? So what we knew back in the day about like a SWG and URL filtering, all of that has basically gone out of the window. And as a cybersecurity vendor, the decisions that we are making on a daily basis is how can I stream this data without actually leaking all the confidential information, privacy, and so on. If I buffer the data, what does that mean? How much can I potentially buffer? And this is where Morpheus, I know we worked on the streaming analytics with Morpheus to make detection, not just visibility, but also making controls where sometimes you have to actually hold the packets before the information is leaked. And that is only possible by doing it in extremely high speed network, which are enabled by GPU powered networks and with software and hardware like NVIDIA. So I really wanted to double click on the gravity of this conversation. It's actually a really non-trivial problem to be solved.
Thanks for that, Renuka. If we can rewind a little bit and a level set, what we've taken away so far is that AI is a workload, right? And it has huge impact in both in terms of generating new traffic streams and taxing the infrastructure, which then brings into fold that the more traffic you're sending, the greater amount of need to from a security perspective to just the onslaught of traffic to process that. But then fortunately we've got solutions from folks at NVIDIA that are enabling new levels of security capability. But what I'd like to do before we continue on the solution path is take a small sidebar and talk about the security threat and the challenges from a security perspective. And I think Renuka, you mentioned that you had a couple thoughts about what are the different kinds of AI security threats, and perhaps you could touch on a little bit about what does that need or cause in terms of the way we think about infrastructure.
Right. So just in terms of the net new kinds of threats that AI introduces, I actually like to use a specific taxonomy because security is such a broad term. And when we think about all the different possibilities, it helps to put a structure to it. So I will talk about infrastructure aspect of it, but there is clearly data aspect of it, which is who has access to data, because data is everything. If you have good inputs, you get good output. So that is actually something which is extremely vulnerable attack surface. We are also very familiar with the AI models, and there is like even the AI agents. There is a lineage where the information is coming from. There is supply chain attacks. There's all kinds of things which are in the that are possible in the AI security realm. But coming to the specific area of AI infrastructure based attacks, I think the age old security problems of access control, threat protection, data leakage prevention, and now compliance and privacy, they don't change. Your protocols may change, your workloads may change, but the core fundamental problems that any security solution is trying to solve, they don't change. So I feel like these are the basic constructs for the AI infrastructure security that we want to address, which is access control, who has access to what, how, visibility, all of that together. Then threat protection, can I make sure that the infrastructure is safe? Like if you remember when DeepSeek was introduced, within a few hours, people were able to get the API tokens and the username passwords for the DeepSeek application, which is crazy because it is actually the basic infrastructure hygiene and the, in some sense, also application security concept. So that is like how basic conversations we are talking about when it comes to threat protection. And then, of course, the data leakage prevention, which is a little bit more complicated because now you're crossing the intellectual property, credit cards. If I have a credit card in natural language, will my DLP solution catch it? Because my DLP solution is looking at a 16-digit string. But if I spell it out in words, what happens? So these are completely new gamut of AI security infrastructure related problems that we are solving for.
Very good. No, that the landscape is extremely rich. Kevin, before we move to our next question, any additional thoughts on the AI security threat question?
Yeah, so I think, the challenge is also just with the amount of data. And so I think Renuka alluded to just trying to see whether you can buffer the data. Part of what Morpheus does is detect things that are passwords and, in regulated environments, whether that's healthcare or finance, there's specific things that you just can't leak. And so being able to detect those things in real time is critical. And so that's part of what our Morpheus platform does, is detect things that is, personally identifiable information, PII, is really critical. And if you're trying to do that manually, good luck. The speed and the fact that all of these devices, this is not something that you can do just sort of manually. You need to automate that and detect that. And there's just too much code, and a lot of the code now is going to be generated by AI. And if you didn't put the right guardrails in place, problems are going to happen. You need to be able to detect that and mitigate that in real time. And so this is really new functionality, I think, that Aryaka is looking at. Renuka mentioned just being able to do, moving beyond that point-to-point sort of networking, which is fairly static and actually was easy. AI is going to make things more complex, but at the same time, it's going to bring all sorts of new tools to bear that you can address some of that complexity and make things rapid and dynamic. So that's important.
It's always great to hear that there are enormous challenges as we embrace new frontiers of technology, and that the what people need to do is start thinking about how do we start embracing those set of solutions, which is a perfect segue with what both of you just answered the last question with, to start talking about, how should the rubber hit the road, right? So we've got an audience who's probably sitting there and thinking, starting to have all these thoughts about, oh my gosh, it's like, where do I start? What do I be thinking about? So let's move into the last chapter here of our discussion together, and start hitting about, what is it that organizations need to be thinking about in terms of using AI as a solution playbook. I think we've done a fantastic job laying out things like Morpheus and the challenge landscape. Maybe starting with you, Renuka, how would you recommend enterprises and your customers start on this journey?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I may say something a little bit more controversial here, Mauricio, as well, which is we love AI and we want AI to solve a lot of problems for us. But in some strange way, what we need to do is take a step back and rethink what problem are we trying to solve for. In case of our, performance needs and being able to identify, attacks on the fly, we are actually solving the problems which are like laws of physics conversations. Okay. And this is where understanding where the traffic is going, like I said, it's a little bit indeterministic right now because of the nature of the AI traffic. So first, getting to the basics of understanding the physical aspects of where the packets are, because at the end of the day, if you cannot hold them, if you cannot even see them because they are bypassing your security systems, that's the problem number one that needs to be solved. And that can only be solved if you have visibility into what your users are using and what is the traffic pattern. So what, as Kevin was saying, modeling that, being able to see that is actually super critical. Now, having said that, it's really difficult for customers to determine what happens after their once the traffic leaves their user laptop or their network. They have no idea where the traffic is going. And I don't want to state like the obvious with the million different kinds of attacks. The most recent one was where the service provider routers were compromised. How do you make sure where your traffic is going? Because that's something which is like really difficult problem to solve. And I think that's where having end-to-end zero trust approach, or what we call in Aryaka's world, we call it zero trust to WAN. Do you know where your traffic is going? Do you know who all are handling it? Is it encrypted? Is it clean? So I think we enterprises need to think about this from like, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. We can talk about it for hours, but I think you have to start from the basics. And then this is where having a solution which is empowered by these kinds of network accelerators and being able to do these things at scale is actually super critical. So you should be able to do complete visibility as well as control to all your traffic, no matter where it is coming from and no matter where it's going. So I think it's time to rethink the basic network architecture is what I would urge people to consider.
Yes, I
Ye-
think the visibility question is a huge issue because we see that in our research, right? It's like people don't know what they've got, let alone they don't know how to control it, right? So I think that's a very good starting point. Kevin, what about you? What do you think is the starting point?
Yeah, so I think, you know, if we look at AI, I think it was mentioned here about encryption and visibility, and both of those, we need to secure the data, and that's the data at rest and the data in motion. So we see encryption as a key underlying technology, and we accelerate that. So, you know, previously people thought, oh, we'll just run that in software. We'll run IPsec or TLS in software. When you start talking about 100 gigabits per second, now 400 gigabits per second, soon 800 gigabits per second, trying to encrypt that data and decrypt that in real time, for example, with IPsec, will bring the state-of-the-art CPU to its needs. And so you need these network accelerators that are able to do that without any burden on the CPU. So that's a critical function that I think enterprises need to start to think about, is the way we did things in the past just won't work looking forward, because the amount of data that AI is exchanging is just massive. These aren't simple, API calls. The KV cache, for example, is the intermediate binaries that are used by AIs. They're massive, and the data growth is massive. Vector databases, massive amounts of data that's going in between. And the second piece that Renuka mentioned here was the visibility. And another platform that we just introduced is called Argus. We put a bunch of eyes on the data. One of the things that happens, we see in a containerized environment that enterprises are moving towards, you can actually digitally sign a container so that we know that whoever authored that wrote that software and delivered a solution that has been containerized, that it has integrity. We can authenticate that with a secure hash that says, yes, it hasn't been modified. And then you install it and you start to run it, and there can be a side channel attack that actually modifies it. So being able to continuously measure the performance and the integrity by doing real-time authentication, runtime authentication is important. And so that's what we're introducing with our Argus platform, that is able to do that independent of the CPU. because one of the things that happens with a CPU that now is tightly coupled and sort of orchestrating AI workloads that are being accelerated with GPUs, if that CPU becomes compromised through a side channel attack, for example, you have to continue to be able to offer cybersecurity. So having a air-gapped solution is what we've done with our Argus. And so again, we build frameworks and platforms. We accelerate things like encryption and decryption and being able to do authentication. And then we rely on partners to actually productize that and make solutions that customers can use. And for enterprises, I think that's the key, is to go find the right partners. Don't try to do this yourself. There's just too much going on. That's not your day job. Focus on your day job, which is running a business, and really taking the expertise that you have, use AI to accelerate and take advantage of your domain expertise, and at the same time rely on partners that have the right cybersecurity solution to protect your AIs and to use AI to protect AI.
I would just add one quick thing, Kevin. Like the thing you touched upon is the scale out architecture. We are super excited about the fact that the scale out architecture of the software now has a hardware companion. Like for decades, we were like, usually everybody designed for a scale up architecture. And then they were kind of like very artificial, ways to scale out and launch another, process and so on. One of the beauty of the GPU parallel architecture is essentially it enables infinite scale out architecture. And I think that's the game changing conversation for especially people like us who are by default, we were built for a scale out architecture at scale.
Very good. And so what I've heard thus far, and what enterprise should be thinking about as they continue on this journey is, go back to the basics, right? Visibility. Make sure that you start thinking about, are you answering the basic question? And in order to do so, I think I've heard from Kevin, it's like, well, in order to do that, you need to have the right infrastructure. You need the right foundational elements, because you can't build a strong house on a weak foundation. And the other thing that I think you hit on that's very salient, Kevin, is that to try to figure this out yourself, right? Is that there are other people, very smart people, whether it be from NVIDIA or from Aryaka, that can help on this journey to make sure that we don't stumble as we continue on this journey. And so before we close out, I do want to hit on one last question here about going back to what we set out, was that networking and security need to fuse together with AI as the gravity that is further fomenting that. Now, I want to close out with another question on how operationally people should be thinking about. And Renuka, I'll start with you. Given that you're working with customers day in and day out, the question is, how should enterprises get the right pace, right? Now, how should they move fast enough? If what we're saying is, do the basics, which is a good starting point, and then have the right infrastructure. Now, what is it that people can do to make sure they move fast enough to not get left behind, but at the same time not make costly mistakes?
Yeah, so Mauricio, I actually relate the AI evolution very similar to the DevSecOps evolution that we had. In fact, I had some presentation. We talked about AI ML SecOps because it touches so many aspects within a customer and so many departments. Our customers are telling us they are creating now AI adoption team and so on. So I think if we break down the problem into smaller pieces and make sure all the stakeholders and people who are accountable for it, like as simple as data, who owns data? Security of data is really important. Security of models, data scientists, lineage, Kevin touched upon it. Very important. Infrastructure, basic networking, basic security. So treating this problem like we treated the DevSecOps is, I think, one of the easiest way to break it down, make sure all the accountable and responsible organizational people are involved, and that can actually accelerate AI adoption tremendously, in my opinion.
Very, very good points. Kevin, any additional thoughts about what is it that how enterprises should embrace and go on their journey?
Yeah, so AI is coming. It's going to transform every industry. You should focus, if you're an enterprise, on what is your core, domain expertise. Use AI to accelerate that. Take advantage of that domain expertise. And again, it is going to create new challenges because AI is fast. It uses huge amounts of data. It's a different type of challenge than what we've seen. But I agree that it's an evolution of DevSecOps. It's AI SecOps. And so I think the folks that have expertise in DevSecOps, AI is a new world. We're building AI factories. You need to protect models, you need to protect data, you need to protect users, but it's also an evolution. And so the ability and all of the expertise that companies have developed for years to develop these types of solutions. And if you have something that is inherently a scale out solution, one of the things with AI is it's no longer about a single device. The computer is no longer something that's really simple that I can look at and say, oh, there's a processor and a GPU inside of it, and you wrap sheet metal around that, and it's connected to a network port. The data center is the new unit of computing for AI. And so you need a scale out architecture to address that. And so I think that's one of the things that enterprises should do is focus on how they use AI to leverage their domain expertise, have humans interacting with AIs, using AI to accelerate their own productivity. And then, the partners that you have are really important to make that all secure and scalable. So happy that we've got partners like Aryaka here.
Thank you, Kevin. Very salient points there. And Renuka, I'd like to then give you the final word here to dovetail with Kevin's comments about the needs from his perspective about scale out. And maybe we can have the final thought from you about, what do you see the future holding, and why do you think this time will be better?
Yeah, so I think, Mauricio, we're definitely in very exciting times, but this is not a new thing. We saw adoption of cloud, we saw adoption of different SaaS applications. AI is actually a little bit higher impact for sure. But as Kevin was mentioning, if enterprises focus on what are the most important things for their business and then leverage the latest and the greatest, technologies that are available and solve the basic laws of physics problems, like, how do I make sure that my network is modernized? How do I make sure that my cybersecurity controls are for the new sets of cybersecurity challenges? I think if we just continue to focus on doing the best and providing the best technology, and offer a solution for this, it'll definitely be much easier to adopt the AI and go through these motions and the changes that we are all actually, it's a privilege to be, in fact, in this time, and see all the benefits of this new technology.
Absolutely. It's a new inflection. It's always exciting to see these new technology inflections come into view, and this one is particularly impactful. With that, we've come to an end of our time together. I really appreciate the thoughts and the discussion we had today. Hopefully you did as well.